welcome to the Bedroom Studios podcast, the podcast where we talk about what goes on behind the scenes in a musician's world and bridge the industry gap by bringing their stories, expertise, and advice to early career artists. Subscribe to join us for a fun chat about life as a creative person, tips and tricks for pursuing an artistic career, navigating the music industry, and more. I am your host, Emma, and today I will be interviewing Siobhan Bodrug. Even though Siobhan has been singing since before she could talk, it all started on Father's Day of 2016, her first gig. Since then, she has wowed audiences in many venues, including opening for indie mainstays Stars and Juno award winners Dizzy at the Golden Hour Festival, the iconic Rockwood Music Hall in New York City, headlining her own show at the Regent Theater, the Empire Theater Country Pop, Sandbanks Music Festival, Mocambo, and was selected as a Honey Jam artist for 2022. Her music is a seamless blend of indie pop and R&B, and her soulful vocals defy her 19 years on the planet. She has appeared on SiriusXM, Mix 97, and performed a live-to-air Christmas special. Her latest single, The End Lies Ahead, has over 100,000 streams on Spotify. The future is bright for Siobhan Bodrug because, as PeopleOfPEC said in a recent review, can we just talk for a minute about how fabulous Siobhan Bodrug is? If you have never heard of this powerhouse singer, you soon will. She is fire. Her voice is strong and sure, and she has a very strong command of her craft. She is a brilliant young artist. So I'm very happy to have you on, and I 100% agree with that review.
Thank you so much, Emma, for having me. This is going to be great.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I have a lot of questions about all of your performances and your experiences with that, but I think a good place to start would be to listen to your song.
Yeah.
For the listeners who do not know, we met at the auditions for an artist development program, and your audition was so memorable. There was so many people, like at least 40, I think, people auditioning, and I still very clearly remember your audition.
Thank you. That actually means so much to me. That was about 2 years ago now. I was 17, like freshly 17. And so it was definitely nerve-wracking. And the program that we're talking about is Honey Jam. And I ended up getting chosen for that year, which was awesome. But it was so surreal because you had 30 seconds. And I remember they didn't have a piano there. And me and my dad performs with me a lot, and he'll probably come up a lot in this interview. But he actually went back home, got the piano, brought it up, and then set it up for only a 30-second chorus. And then we had to rip it down, and then it was audition after audition after. So it was definitely a surreal experience, and I'm glad that it all paid off by me getting in. But it was a really fun audition. I was really happy about it, but yeah, and the people will hear they'll hear it in the song, but it's a very catchy chorus, but it's also you don't predict it coming. Oh, okay, that's great. I'm glad. I mean, I've heard it so many times now because with the recording process, it's you're doing I'll sing the end lies ahead over and over and over and over again. So it's and I wrote that when I was about 16, 17. So it's been so long since I actually haven't played that song in a long time, live. But it's one of those songs, it's it just ended up working out. But
well, let's listen to it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to press play. Let's do it. And so The End Lies Ahead.
Seems right, the days fly by. There's always a light, don't worry. Clouds turn into rain. There's joy and pain. The future is bright, don't worry. What happens when the sadness takes over? What happens when tomorrow is over? The end lies ahead, feel lost up in my head, double cross. gets played off as glory. What happens when the sadness takes over? What happens when tomorrow is over? The end lies ahead, feel lost up in my head, double crossed. It's a crumbling wall and a long free fall to dead. From a finish comes a start in my heart. The end lies ahead. What happens when the sadness takes over? What happens when tomorrow is over? The end lies ahead, feel lost up in my head, double crossed. It's a crumbling wall and a long free fall to dead. From a finish comes a start in my heart. The end lies ahead. From a finish comes a start in my heart. The end lies ahead.
Yay! It's so beautiful. It's so pretty.
Thank
I
you.
love it. Like, I genuinely, like, I feel like I'm saying this for every episode now, but, like, I am a genuine fan, and I will listen to the song when I'm not interviewing you for the podcast.
I mean, that's the goal, right? And, like, it's so nice that it connected with you at the audition, because at that point it was still like we were still recording it, and we didn't record that until we didn't release it until after the Honey Jam showcase, and so it was nice to kind of not only like showcase myself as an artist that's coming up, but showcasing that song, because it was so it's so special to my dad and I. It's one of those songs that was just like, I don't know if, like, am I allowed to talk about the writing process?
Yes. I want to hear all about the writing process.
Okay, cool. So a lot of the times, like, my writing process has changed a lot over the last couple of years. It used to be like my dad and I solely. We'd be in a room. And for anyone who doesn't know, my dad is a producer. He's worked with Alanis. He's worked with Oscar Peterson. Like, he's done a lot of amazing shit. And he's had a lot of experience writing with people, like, for his whole life. So we kind of I started my writing stuff with my dad, and it was like solely with that. And then over the pandemic, I was 15, 16, and, you know, I'd only written with my dad, but he was busy. He has a job. He's doing stuff. So I started kind of writing stuff on my own. And then when I'd get stuck, I'd be like, hey, do you want to, like, fix this? So with this song in particular, I wrote the guitar parts in the verse. And I had this verse, and I was sitting on it for about a month and a half. Just one of those things. And I was like, it's good, but I don't know where it's supposed to go. And I had, like, the end lies ahead, that part. But I was like, but I don't know what to do after that. So one day I was sitting in the living room. I'm like, hey, Dad, let's get this done. He's like, oh, okay. He sits down, no joke, and writes that whole chorus, like the final chorus, in about 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? Like, how did you do that? Like, I've been sitting on this for about, like, a month. Like, I couldn't do that. And then we ended up writing the rest of the song. And then it was, like, one of those songs, it was, like, immediately. We're like, we gotta, like, make this happen and release it. So it was one of those great, it holds a special place in my heart, for sure. It was, also, it's great that it has, like, 100,000 streams on Spotify. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So the chorus and the verse are so different from each other,
yes,
in terms of, like, the intensity, but you link them together in such, like, it's so smooth, and it makes sense. It makes so much sense.
Thank you. No, I think, like, with writing, it's definitely a process. I'm assuming you also write too, so it's like you understand this. But it's like sometimes you have parts, and I think the hardest thing for me was to connect them, especially as a younger songwriter when I was writing stuff back then. It was like, how am I gonna connect this part to the next part? And so with that song, again, in particular, it was one of those things. It was like, the verse is so quiet and so soft. It's telling a story, but like it needs to go somewhere. And something that my dad is really good at is making it go somewhere. And so we kind of wrote that pre-chorus to kind of connect it, and it ended up working. Like the intensity thing, like I'm glad that translates, because that was the goal of the whole thing. Is it's like, oh, okay, we have these two amazing parts, let's connect them with this kind of pre-chorus that's a bit more chill, but still building up to that.
Yeah, the chorus is already so catchy and so memorable, but because it's so different from the verse, it's like, it makes it even more memorable.
Yeah.
But then also it makes the verse more memorable because it's so different.
Well, thank you. I think also a huge part of that is like instrumentation. Like, how are you, like again, I write and I do a lot of finger picking. So, but you can't necessarily sustain that throughout the whole song, because sometimes it can get kind of boring, and unless you're doing like a ballad or like, I mean, I guess that's a ballad, but like, you know, like an indie like folk song, like the finger picking works. But you know, for the music I'm writing, I can't sustain the finger picking for that long and without it sounding kind of all the same. And so I think it's like kind of creating dynamics with playing as well. And at that point, I'm in school right now, and so I'm learning a lot about like how to play the guitar better, and you know, the different parts of it, and you know, learning the fretboard, and so I mean, my dad obviously knows how to play, so like amazingly, so he doesn't have any issues with that. But for me, it was a journey, because I wanted to learn more about how to build intensity, and not just by strumming or not just by finger picking, and kind of putting it all together. And that was like one of the first times that I put it all together, and it felt like cohesive. Like it felt like, okay, this works. So I'm glad it's come across for another audience, for my
so
audience.
Cool.
But yeah,
I wanted to ask, when you wrote the lyric, "The end lies ahead," was there like an inspiration behind it? Or like what does that mean, the end lies ahead?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I said this earlier, but I wrote in the pandemic. So I mean, the pandemic for me, and I think this goes for a lot of other artists too, was actually not bad. It was a time where we could, you know, write and record and, you know, like meet people through Zoom, like what we're doing today. And so I did a lot of that. But there was a part of me, I was 16, and I came to Toronto to go to an arts high school, Wexford, in Scarborough. And I wasn't able to live my experience in the high school and do things that 16-year-olds do, because I was stuck in my room. And so I think there was a lot of the feelings that I feel as a human are very like, oh, I get negative, but I'm like, okay, well, there's a positive side to it too. And so I think the words like "the end lies ahead," like that phrase, it kind of represents that. Is it's like the end lies ahead for this stupid pandemic. But you know, I'm gonna push through, and I'm, you know. And I think the verses are kind of about like the lessons that I learned in the pandemic and in my life so far. And so I think like the end lies ahead, it's like there's going to be an end. There's going to be a positive side to this. And, you know, there was for me, and as, again, for a lot of other artists, for a lot of people there wasn't. But I was lucky enough to have that experience. So I think that's kind of what it means. Is the pandemic definitely inspired that song a lot.
That's really cool. Because when, like, I don't know if this is just me, but when I think of the end, I think of it almost like a bad thing of the good things are going to end. But it's nice how you kind of flip that, or it's like the thing that we're going through right now, that's going to end. And then it's gonna be good after that.
Well, like, I think, and this is like not even music related, I think this is more life related, is that like the good things don't last forever, but neither do the bad things. So, and I think that's something that I've learned a lot about throughout my very short time on this earth. But it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned as a human. It's just, you know, there's the good things can last a long time, but sometimes they don't, or the bad things, it's the same thing. And so I think you have to look at it from like the two perspectives. There's not not everything has to be negative. Not everything has to be positive. So
everything's in seasons.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm a teenager, so like my emotions are like this 100% of the time.
Yes. Me too. Literally.
Or maybe that doesn't go away when you become an adult, but
I don't know. Well, I mean, we're artists, so it probably will never go away.
the amount of great songs I've gotten out of my weird emotional issues, you know, it's great. And I'm sure a lot of artists say the exact same thing, but
It becomes our superpower, but it does not feel like that.
no.
It really does not.
It feels like a superpower when you go and you sing that song in front of an audience and they like it. But it doesn't feel like a superpower when you're sitting on your bed and you're like, why am I writing this?
Yeah.
Like,
Have you ever been writing, and you just kind of pause and you're like, this is so sad. Why is this so sad?
like all the time. I find that I'm not fully always conscious of what I'm writing. And so I start writing it. I'm like, oh, that's actually how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
It's like listening to music. It's like, you're like, oh, like that's fully representing how I feel. But it's like when I'm writing it, it like surprises me. It's like I'm an outsider when I'm writing sometimes. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, I guess that works. But that happens to me all the time. I've written like, I mean, again, I'm not like huge on writing. I do write a lot of love. I write quite a bit of love songs, but they're not like my main focus. But when I do, like as a teenager, you know, bad teenage heartbreak, like I'll be like, that was sad. Why did I stay in that for so long? Like what am I doing? But it's nice that, you know, you get closure from writing those things. I think that's my biggest, like, I'll look to my guitar and I'll be like, I need you to work with me because I need to get closure from this situation. So
Yeah, I totally relate to like just songwriting revealing so much about what's going on in my subconscious. And it's like I don't even realize it until the song is done and I look back and I'm like, wow, that I did not know that was what was going on in my head.
it's so funny. It happens to everyone who's a songwriter. It totally happens. And you're like, oh, like that connects to that and this happened with this. And it's awesome. I love that about writing. I think it's great.
Me too. So I wanted to ask more about your experiencing playing shows and playing gigs.
Well, I've been doing gigs since I was about 11. I was like, Dad, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go full into it. I'm going to dive into the deep end. So I've been doing like little shows since I was about 11. My experience with it, I learned so much from it. Every single time I do a show, I come home and I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? What songs related to the audience? How's the audience different than the last one? In terms of like being an artist and doing shows, I think that's where you learn the most about yourself as an artist, and you know, you learn like what's gonna come across, like what do people like about what you're doing, and you know, I get different compliments every time, or I get criticism from my family comes to all my gigs. I love my supportive family, so sometimes I'll get the criticism. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, constructive criticism.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not trying to bash.
Honestly, though, like, when I play shows, I ask them, like, was I awkward? And they're like, yeah, you were a little bit. Like, in this one song.
Well, I have this thing where I sometimes tend to ramble. I had this one gig.
Me too.
Yeah, I had this one gig, and this is going to sound maybe a bit egotistical, but I was really funny. And then I was like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to write a script for my gig. I'm just going to go on there and I'm just going to be funny. That doesn't come every time. That's not a thing. Depends on your confidence that day. It depends on how much sleep you got. It depends on what you've eaten. Like, and all of those factors come into the talking part. And so I've started working on, you know, kind of having things prepared to say, and, you know, it's like, so I don't have to maybe depend on how quote unquote funny I will be on my gig. So yeah. I feel like that's a part of, there's so many parts to the live music experience that a lot of people just don't realize. And I didn't realize it until a couple months ago, to be honest with you. So
when you're talking between songs, is there I guess, like a certain persona that you want to channel, or like how do you plan what you're gonna say?
So for me, like when I go on stage, I am like 100% myself. That is like the only time, like I feel like that's one of the only times in my life where I can just completely be myself. So the quote unquote persona that I'm like presenting is basically myself, except with a little bit more energy. So when I'm preparing for things to say, I try to think of it like, okay, what would I say if I wasn't nervous and I was in this context and I was rehearsing? And then that's usually how I prepare it. I'll be like, okay, like let's, and then sometimes I'll be like, okay, maybe I can add a joke in here or relate the experience to something else. Or honestly, it's a journey. Like I've just started doing this. This is a very new thing for me, but I highly recommend it for musicians that, especially I'm not very good at, like, I love talking to people, but I get so nervous when I'm talking on stage. It reminds me of like public speaking when I was in grade 7 and I had to do a speech on like a random old dude, like that stuff. Like I don't like that. Like that really triggers me. So I think for me, just being more prepared and going into it and kind of having an idea of what I'm gonna say, it helps, especially if you're nervous about the talking part. Like when I first started gigging, my dad would write out a script and I would have it on the stage. That's how nervous I was. But when I'm singing, nothing matters. I'm just fully like, I'm into it. I'm interacting with the audience. Like it's like, I'm not nervous, but it's like immediately after the song, I become super, super, super nervous. I mean, it's gone better like now, but back then it was pretty horrible. But. Yeah,
I can relate to that so much, but I mean, I get nervous while I'm singing too. But I think it's much easier to just like sing the song you have memorized.
Yeah.
And just try to focus on the emotion of the song and how you're sounding and all that, as opposed to like having to generate words.
Well, I think like the biggest, and again, this is something I've learned from live performance, is that I'm a perfectionist. And so when I perform, I'm like, okay, this has to sound perfect. And like, but what you said about the emotion thing, I think that's actually more important than maybe sounding the best. And like, you have a beautiful voice, so I wouldn't even worry about it. Aww. But
oh, thanks.
No, of course. But it's about the emotion, because that's what people are connecting to. You can sound like, if you already sound good, you sound good. But if you hit a wrong note because you're feeling it in that moment, that's so important, because people are like, oh, she isn't perfect. I'm watching someone, like, I mean, obviously you want to maintain professionalism and, you know, whatever, but, you know, people connect to those moments.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've had to learn, is like, you can't just always perform the song, memorize it, make it sound great, because it sometimes the emotion needs to come into it. So.
Yeah. Do you find that, like, having recorded music and having kind of that really high quality version of the song immortalized, do you find that can sometimes create like an unrealistic standard for yourself?
I don't actually. That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, I feel like when I record, I solidify the song, and so like like I get it. I feel like I fully understand it after I record a song.
Yeah.
And I usually actually use some of the pieces that we've recorded into the live performance. I don't think it sets an unrealistic standard for me, because like, for me, we don't like, the record doesn't sound that different than the live. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And so.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I feel like it doesn't set an unrealistic standard for me to like meet to. However, yeah, like the End Lies Ahead, there's this big note that I have to do. And so I did it for the recording, and it actually made me, I was so nervous about doing it live. And so it was like I had to fight like my mental, like the voice in my head, and be like, okay, you can do this. Like, you don't have to meet the expectation of the recording, but you know, like once you like get through that like weird, like, oh, can I do it as well as the recording thing, that usually ends up working out. But yeah, I feel like overall, I don't have that like those voices in my head saying like, oh, like you need to meet up to your recording. So
and I guess you have so much control over your voice as well. So I'm assuming that like once you spent the time to record it and done all the multiple takes and the trial and error, you're pretty much solid with being able to sing that song live anyways.
Well, and you know what? It's like what I love about doing live stuff is that you can kind of change it up a bit too.
Yeah.
So like I have this song called Think It's Gonna Rain Today, and it's been released for a couple of years now, which is crazy to think. And actually just for this gig, I was like, oh, can I play this song on the guitar? And so I started playing on the guitar. And my dad and I were rehearsing. We were like, oh, like this sounds actually quite cool. And we've been looking to make this song a bit more like high energy when we're playing a show because it's a pretty calm ballad. And like we reinvented it. And now it's like we have a new thing. And so I think there's also that aspect of it. It's like, oh, I have the recording and that's my basis. But then, okay, I'm going to build off of that. Or I'm going to take certain parts from it and use those parts. And because I liked that in the recording, but we didn't do that when we wrote it. So I think there's also that aspect too.
That's so cool. Yeah, I have a song that I kind of did something similar where when I wrote it as like a very sad ballad, but then when we were recording it, we were thinking, okay, this song can work as a ballad, but it could also work as something more upbeat. So in the recording, we kind of went somewhere in the middle, but then sometimes I'll perform it with a band and we'll go super hard with it and make it so upbeat. And then other times we'll just make it acoustic and sad and slow.
Well, and you know what? Like that's the beauty of, you know, writing a song and then kind of like, oh, I can do it this way, I can do it this way. Like it's so subjective. You can do it any way you want. Like I was on TikTok a couple days ago and this like punk like rock artist was performing Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift.
Oh my gosh, I saw that. It was so good.
I was like, this sounds better than the original to me. And it's like, it's so cool how people can interpret different like genres and making and put into their own genre and be like, oh, like this is awesome. So I think it's like reinventing songs is like one of the most important parts of being an artist and, you know, performing live.
Yeah, for sure.
Because especially like someone like Beyonce, like they definitely get sick of, you know, singing their big hits, right? And then they reinvent them and they're like, oh, this is like a new song. So
when I play with other musicians, I don't know if I feel like some people are very strict on like, I want you to play it this way and like, or play it exactly like the recording. But I always say to them, just like, play the right chords, but do whatever you want because you're going to bring something special and something new to the song.
What I love about working with my dad is that like, actually for this gig, again, I've written a couple songs in the last month or so and we love them. Like we both were like, oh my God, these are amazing. And so we wanted to perform them. But the way that I wrote them was on the guitar and it was like very similar chords. And, you know, I was kind of like, okay, like, but I really want to perform them, but I don't want to perform them in this way. I don't want to perform them also by myself. I want there to be another part to it. And so we sat down and I just played the song once through. And then my dad listened and he just started playing stuff. And like, I was like, oh, that's like beautiful. And then he started playing this piano part. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to play the piano part, but on the guitar. Ooh. And we have, and it's like, and it's become this like intense, beautiful ballad. But before it was just me and it sounded maybe a bit too bluesy. And it was like, so we turned it into something that was maybe completely different than what we thought it was supposed to be. But that's the beauty of it. And like what you were talking about, it's like letting other musicians hear kind of what the song is and them interpreting it a bit differently than maybe you are. And one of the two songs I actually wrote with my dad, and he interpreted it differently after we wrote it too, which is really cool, right? He thought it was supposed to be one way, but then he was like, oh, okay, maybe it can be a different way.
And I guess like when, especially since he's co-writing, when he knows the song so well, I feel like that makes a huge difference. Like you're keeping the kind of core
100%
of what the song is, but then branching out.
Well, and you know, it's so different. I don't know, do you write on guitar or piano?
I mostly write on piano. Sometimes I write on guitar though.
Yeah. Like for me, I write mostly on the guitar. But when I'm with my dad, he writes on piano. And so But recently, we've been both writing on my guitar. And it's definitely changed a lot of things, because it's like when we had this song, and the song I was talking about earlier, and like because it was written on guitar, it's like, oh, just do it by yourself. I was like, yeah, but there's so many, like we could do it in so many different ways. But because he didn't write it on piano, he was like sitting there, he's like, oh, and it's like it puts his mind into a different place too, which I thought was so cool. I was like, okay, we've written this song together, and maybe we wrote it on the guitar, but like, there's so many different, like, you can do it in so many different ways. I think, and that was, like, my biggest discovery in the last couple of days, is the rearranging thing is so fun. Yeah.
I remember one time I was, like, looking for instrumental tracks online, and I ended up writing a song, like, just the melody and the lyrics to a track that I never would have come up with had I not done that. Because it was, like, kind of a different style than what I would usually do, and it just sort of keeps things spicy.
Yeah, it keeps
not a good way.
No, I totally get it. It keeps it fresh, right? And you know what? Like, co-writing is a big thing for me. Like, I love co-writing, and because I started with it with my dad, but I've done it with a lot of other people, and we've done it with a lot of other people too. And it's like every time you enter a co-writing room, you learn so much about the other person.
Yeah.
And you learn about, okay, like what can I take from this person? Like, what did I love about their writing? I worked with actually one of my classmates, and I was writing with them, and I was like, oh, I really love the way that you're phrasing that. She sounds very much like Joni Mitchell and Carole King. And I'm like I don't sound like that. And so I was like, but I love that music. Like I listen to it all the time. And I was like, how are you doing that? Like, I don't understand. But it's like, okay, now I want to learn how to do that and maybe interpret it in my way, right? And that, like, I think that's why co-writing is so important. It's because you actually develop as a great songwriter faster if you work with other people. Because music should be, I think, in my opinion, I think it should be a collaborative experience. So.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
Yeah. I mean, writing a song by yourself, oh, it's a great ego boost. Like, every once in a while I'll be like, oh, this is amazing.
Only when it's a song that you like.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, so good. But then, I take it to my dad, and he's like, oh, well, we could fix this. I'm like, I didn't write it by myself anymore. And that's okay, because the song ends up being better, right? It's so important. The song should be, it's not about, my dad and I have this phrase, it's called tune bully. And basically what a tune bully, I've actually explained this to so many people recently, which I think is really funny. A tune bully is someone that puts their ego before the song. Oh. And I used to be a tune bully. When I was younger, I was like, oh, I want to be like John Mayer, and I want to write the songs all by myself. I don't want any help. My dad's like, but the song isn't as good if you don't have someone to listen, like if you don't have someone collaborating with you. And so I've learned to not be a tune bully. And so maybe writing a song by myself, coming up with the foundation is great. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes it's a great song by myself, like I've written it by myself. But a lot of time it's like, okay, I want your opinion. I want you to fix it and make it better. It's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just, what you were saying makes me think of, sometimes I'll go to, like, I don't know, like a family member or a friend, and be like, okay, I want you to listen to this song, but I just want you to tell me that you're proud of me and that it's a good song. I want any feedback.
It's like, I don't actually need your opinion. I just want
yeah,
that validation.
I just want the validation.
Like, I am actually the opposite of that. I am like, I'll play a song for anyone. Like, I'll play it for like my boyfriend or my stepmom or my mom or something, and I'll be like, just tell me your honest opinion. And they'll be like, oh, it's good. I'm like, no, I can tell by your tone. There's something you gotta say. And then they go into it, and then for a second, it's a split second, I feel like, oh, like, why did they say that? But then it's like, okay, I get where they're coming from. You don't have to take everything that these people say.
Yeah.
You can take it with a grain of salt if you really want to, but, you know, again, listen, like, playing a song for an outsider's perspective is so important.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes they hear things that you don't. Even if you're the most talented musician, like someone like Jacob Collier, like... Sometimes you need that outsider's perspective and the advice from just a listener.
Yeah, especially from someone who's not a musician. Because most of the people who are going to be listening to our songs aren't musicians.
Yeah, 100%. I did mention my boyfriend and my stepmom, and they're both in music. So when I do listen to their opinions, I'll be like, okay, but you actually, like, their opinions are I take them very close to my heart. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'm like, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do. But yeah, like, it's, again, also having, like, I'm so lucky. Most of my family is in the arts in some form or music or whatever. And so I'm really lucky that I can have those perspectives. But, you know, every once in a while I'll play a song for my grandmother, who is a dancer, so she's a creative, but she's not in music. And I look for the ego boost, because she goes, oh, Siobhan, it's so good. It's the best song you've ever written. So you need those people in your life too.
For sure.
So
it's like having the ability to kind of filter through what people say, even like if someone gives you their honest opinion. Sometimes like people are trying, I don't know, like in my experience, sometimes like I'll ask my dad or my mom for opinions, and they're not musicians, but you know, like they listen to music and they hear me practice all the time. And so sometimes they'll say something that is they're trying to say something else, but they don't have the words to express what it is they're trying to say. So it's like really thinking about, okay, like they're saying this, but like they're saying I don't know, like something with like the rhythm isn't working, but maybe it's just like the speed of the song or something, you know?
Well, and you know what, like my mom is like that. And she'll listen to my stuff, and she'll be like, oh, I really like it. And like, my parents are not together anymore, but when they were, like, obviously my mom was around music, so she has like she has a bit of vocabulary, but she doesn't have all of it. But it's like okay, I kind of get what you're saying, but again, I'm so lucky, and I'm very grateful that I have my dad kind of by my side in so many ways, not only music, but when it comes to music, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. We're like synced. I'll be like, oh, I really like this line, but he's like, oh yeah, I already knew you were gonna say something about that. Like it's great. So it's good to have both people. It's good because, you know, like you learn so much from people around you and what their opinions are, if they're musicians or they're not, right?
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk more about your voice and how you developed your singing ability and how you maintain.
So I'm horrible. I'm one of these people that I kind of came out of the womb, and I was lucky enough to have a really great
natural talent.
But natural talent only gets you so far, right? And like a lot of the songs that I do, they're very, very belty and high, and I love those songs. But I've gone through a lot of challenges where I'll do a gig and I don't have a voice after. And then it takes me, and the more that happens, the longer it takes me to recover from it. But I've been lucky enough to I have a couple vocal teachers that I'm working with right now. Falconer Abraham, and he's working with me at my school. And he's really helped me with coming up with kind of singing in a way that it's a bit easier, but I can still get that belty tone. So that's been great, but that's only recent. And then my other vocal teacher is Kira Milan. And she's actually she has a classical background, but she's one of those people that she's so in tune with your body. She'll be like, oh, one time I came in and I had a muscle spasm. She's like, Siobhan, is there something wrong with your leg? I'm like, how did you know that? Like, I don't understand. And she's very in tune with the body and the voice. Like, it's like, and so I've learned a lot from her about more about warming up and, you know, singing in a way, like how important the warm up can be. And I've taken kind of like those parts and tried to implement them in my day-to-day, you know, voice stuff. But overall, I'm not like, you could talk to me about vocal technique and I don't know a lot about it, and I'm learning now, but for so long I did not know anything, and I would just sing, and then sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't. My thing was I would get nervous and I wouldn't breathe when I'd be on stage. Like, I would kind of like hyperventilate. I've learned how to work on that. But yeah, like my voice is, I sing all the time. Like in the house, 100% of the time I'll be singing something. So I think that's kind of how I developed like my skill and my ears, my musical ears. So
it's like with everything, it's like trial and error.
Oh, 100%. And like it's so important to, you know, not ruin your voice, and I'm learning I'm learning that that's becoming way more important, especially if I want to have a career in this. So I've been working with those coaches and coming up with better strategies on ways to sing but still get that, you know, the belty tone or the essence of what I did before. I mean, it's the same, but, you know, doing it in a healthier way is really important.
For sure. I started taking voice lessons recently, like within this year, but I remember when I was younger, my philosophy was, if it hurts, that's probably not a good thing.
And that's the philosophy that my first vocal teacher, Falconer, goes by. It's like, if it hurts, you gotta change it. If it doesn't hurt, don't worry about it. Like, it's like, it's okay. But for me, it started to hurt, and then, you know, it's like, okay, I need a new way of doing this.
Yeah. So your song The End Lies Ahead has over 100,000 streams on Spotify, and that is so, first of all, congratulations.
Thank
that
you.
Is amazing. And I was wondering if were there things that you did to promote it and market it so that it could have a better chance of having that kind of success?
Well, and a lot of people have asked me about this song. And in terms of the promotional aspect, I just put it out. Like, I just put it out, and then I just posted about it a lot. But again, like I said before, I did it at Honey Jam. And so I think people were like, oh, okay. And so that definitely helped me gain some streaming stuff. Because I remember, like, the day after that, like, the day after the concert, I was like, oh my God, it's already gone up like 1,000. I'm like, how is this possible?
Wow.
So I think it's like, it's again, like, just like even doing those showcases and promoting that specific song, like that, that helped me 100%. But other than that, I just, you know, I just posted about it, and it ended up just getting that success, and I was really lucky. A lot of people are like my other songs, because of that song, the other songs went up in streaming and stuff. But like, even those songs, they only had about 3,000, 4,000, I mean, which is great still as well, but like 4,000 streams before that song came out. And so, you know, I haven't released music in a while, and we plan on doing a lot of that this year.
Hey.
But like, I think it's just like having that catalog. It's like, oh, like, when's Siobhan gonna release something? And they go back and then they start listening, or I'll like, for things like this, I'll use those songs, and they usually go up. So it's just, again, it's just like the promotional aspect, just putting it in different places. It's like podcasts, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, I'm not very good at the TikTok thing, which I plan on getting better at this year. That's one of my New Year's resolutions. But, you know, just like, again, just promoting it in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. And it has such, like, I know I keep on saying this, but it has such a catchy hook. And
thank you.
I think that, like, definitely helps when you're putting it on social media.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I want to be into the TikTok thing so badly, but I find it's so much work, first of all.
Me too.
And it's, you know, it's I feel superficial sometimes, but it's like, if I actually worked on it and came up with some strategies on how to promote these songs, I think it would, like, again, it's like also like the amount you're posting, but I think it could do well on TikTok. So I need to start, this is more of a note to myself. I need to start, you know, using not only Instagram for promotional aspects. I think TikTok can really help you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I also have that as my New Year's resolution.
I think it's a New Year's resolution for a lot of musicians.
This past year, I discovered, well, I knew it existed, but I just never really used it, but I discovered Canva for editing images and like text and stuff, but also for videos. And I didn't realize that it was so useful for that. If you search, like, I don't know, like artist, song release, Instagram, it'll have these templates where you can put your video in the background, and then it'll have text that pops up or little like image. It's so cool.
Yeah, no, the technology nowadays is getting ridiculous. Yeah. Even this chat GPT, I know a lot of people, so I'm in school for, at Seneca for independent songwriting and performance right now.
Very cool.
It's like a 1-year program. It's great. And so one of my assignments was to write a country song. And obviously I don't write country. And so I was like, oh, like, what am I going to do? Like, what is the story? Like, what should the story be about? And so my stepmom was like, "Oh, let's ask ChatGPT." And she starts like writing, like coming up with these ideas, and then this fucking AI thing comes up with this whole song. I didn't end up using any of it, but it definitely like sparks ideas. So it's like, I mean, you shouldn't be using ChatGPT to help you write songs, but you know, that was her first idea. So I was like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot. So
Sometimes I'll be listening to a song and I'll generate songwriting ideas from like mishearing a lyric, or they'll say something that sounds really cool and it'll make me think of something else, another lyric idea.
I think for me, I wrote this song about, I think this was about a year ago now, and I was on TikTok. I was scrolling on TikTok and I found this TikTok that had a bunch of dates on it, and it was like there was like February 13th and, you know, like March 9th. Like, it was a bunch of random dates. Yeah. And I was in a 2-month teenager love kind of relationship in high school. So it was like 7-8 months later after we ended that. And this TikTok sparked this idea in me. And so I started writing this song, and it starts off with like February 15th, because that's the day we broke up. And it ended up being this song. It's called Stars Uncrossed. So certain things just spark the writer in you, and you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. But
very awesome. Well, we're nearing the end of our interview, so the 2 more questions. So one is, what advice or resource would you give to your younger self?
Don't listen to everyone all the time. Just, you know, do what your gut's telling you. I think that's the biggest thing, and just keep putting yourself out there. Just keep going. I think that goes for myself now too. I think that's just something that just keep going, and it's gonna work out if you really believe in it.
Yeah, especially as artists, we need to trust ourselves.
Oh, 100%. I think it's a lot about confidence, right? And just you know, not being too egotistical about it, but, you know, believing that you can do the impossible is the way that you make the impossible happen.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's going to be the soundbite.
Okay. I'm like, what? That just came out of me. I was like, I'm really happy about that. Felt like Shakespeare or something. Wisdom. Yeah.
And last question is, do you have a music recommendation for our audience?
So I am obsessed, like I am telling you, like obsessed with this band called Lawrence, and they're a brother-sister duo from New York, and they write pop soul music. Ooh. I have been obsessed with this band since they released their biggest hit called Don't Lose Sight, which is a song, that's not the song I was going to recommend, but listen to that one too. I first discovered them through that song, and they did an acoustic version of it. And it was ridiculous. It was so amazing. I was immediately, like, in love with this band. So they're starting to release new stuff in their new era. Yay. And so my favorite song by them right now is called I'm Confident That I'm Insecure, which definitely goes for me as a person and, you know, for a lot of teenagers, a lot of people. So I think it's, like, one of those songs I just immediately gravitated towards. And they also have an acoustic version for that. So it's like, they're awesome. Highly recommend them. I have nothing but good things to say.
And that's such a good line.
I know. It's so catchy. I'm like, I wish, it was one of those things that I was like, I wish I came up with that. I really wish I came up with that.
Yeah. Well, really awesome. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. I'm so happy that we finally got to do this.
Yes. And I can't wait to hear your new music.
Thank you.
For those of you listening to the podcast, add this podcast to your playlist and like and follow on Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify at Bedroom Studios Podcast. And follow the playlist of guest music recommendations and follow Siobhan's music because it is really awesome.
Thank you.
And you will like it.
Thanks again for having me.